He never thought her silence would be the loudest goodbye he'd ever hear. When Ethan first met Maya, she was full of laughter, soft-spoken, yet full of light. The kind of woman who turned ordinary days into something beautiful just by being there. She loved deeply, forgave easily, and believed in people more than they believed in themselves. Ethan adored her at first, or at least he thought he did. But as time passed, his admiration turned into complacency. He started taking her for granted, ignoring her texts, canceling plans, brushing off her feelings as overreactions. When she tried to talk about how lonely she felt, he'd roll his eyes and say, "You're being dramatic again." Yet, every time he hurt her, Maya stayed. Not because she was weak, but because she believed love was about patience and understanding. She stayed through the cold nights, through the indifference, through the subtle emotional neglect that slowly chipped away at her heart. She thought he'd noticed the way her eyes lost their shine, the way her smile began to fade, but Ethan never did. He believed she'd always be there, waiting, forgiving, loving him despite everything. What he didn't know was that silence can mean many things. Sometimes it's acceptance, and sometimes it's the sound of a breaking heart preparing to walk away. One evening, Maya sat on the edge of the bed, watching Ethan scroll through his phone, laughing at something he wouldn't share with her. That small act, a simple moment of exclusion, was her breaking point. She realized she had been trying to fix a man who didn't want to grow. That night, while he slept soundly beside her, she looked around their room, the memories, the gifts, the photos on the wall, and realized how small she had made herself just to be loved halfway. She decided it was time to go, not out of anger, but out of peace. She quietly packed her things, every fold of clothing feeling like a goodbye she never got to say. She didn't leave a note, no long message, no dramatic confrontation, just silence. In the morning, Ethan woke to an empty side of the bed and a stillness in the air he'd never felt before. At first, he thought she was at work early or visiting a friend. Hours passed, days turned into weeks. He texted her, called her, even showed up at her old apartment, but she was gone, truly gone. That silence that he once ignored now echoed through every corner of his life. He didn't realize how loud the absence of someone's voice could be until hers was gone. At first, Ethan was angry. She left without even saying goodbye. He told his friends, trying to act unfazed. But deep down, the anger was just guilt disguised as pride. As months passed, that pride began to fade. He started noticing the things she used to do, the small notes she'd leave in his lunchbox, the way she'd always remember his favorite coffee order, the way she'd check on him even when he'd been cruel. Every act of love she gave him, he replayed in his mind, realizing how blind he'd been to it all. He started dating again, trying to fill the void, but no one made him feel what Maya once did. Every woman he met seemed distant, shallow, not because they were, but because he had lost the depth that Maya brought into his life. Slowly, he began to change, not because he wanted her back, but because losing her had forced him to look at who he really was. He started treating people with kindness, listening more, respecting boundaries. He learned to value the quiet presence of those who cared. But even with all his growth, he couldn't shake the regret that came with knowing he'd learned too late. Years went by. One afternoon, while walking through a small art fair, Ethan saw her again, Maya. She was standing beside a painting booth, her laughter floating through the air like music. She looked radiant, peaceful in a way she never did when she was with him. And beside her was another man, holding her hand with a gentle protectiveness that Ethan immediately recognized as genuine love. He froze, his heart pounding. For a brief moment, their eyes met. She smiled politely, not with bitterness, but with closure. It was a smile that said, "I've healed." Ethan wanted to say something to apologize, to explain, but words stuck in his throat. What could he possibly say that would undo the years of silence he had forced upon her? He watched as she turned back to the man beside her, their fingers intertwined as naturally as breathing. And in that moment, Ethan understood something that would haunt him forever. Silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's the graveyard of all the things you took for granted. He walked away quietly, his heart heavy but clear. That night, he sat alone in his apartment, the same one they once shared, staring at the empty chair across from him. He whispered, "I'm sorry," but the words fell into the same silence he once ignored. He realized love isn't lost in one big moment. It slips away through small acts of indifference, through ignored texts, through eye rolls and dismissive tones, until one day there's nothing left to say. Maya's silence had spoken louder than any argument could. It had taught him that when someone stops trying, it is not because they don't care anymore. It is because they've cared too much for too long. From then on, Ethan vowed never to take silence for granted again. When someone goes quiet, he listens. When someone says, "I'm fine," he asks again. Because he knows now that love isn't measured by the words you say when things are good, but by the attention you give when things are falling apart. As for Maya, she never spoke badly of him. She didn't need revenge or validation. Her peace was her closure. She learned that walking away isn't weakness, it's strength disguised as stillness. And in her new life, she found someone who didn't make her beg to be heard. Someone who noticed her silence not as comfort, but as a sign to hold her closer. Together, they built a love that didn't need tests or apologies, only presence. Maya's journey became a quiet lesson to anyone who ever felt unseen. You don't have to scream to be heard. Sometimes silence is the loudest truth you can speak. And so, the story of Ethan and Maya stands as a reminder for all never mistake someone's silence for acceptance. It might just be the sound of someone deciding they deserve better. Because when love turns one-sided, silence becomes the final conversation. And by the time you realize what it meant, the person who once waited for you will already have found peace somewhere your apologies can reach.